George Ward was born on Long Island during World War II. The 85-year-old finds comfort in bodies of water. He lives in Rexford, New York, a city on the Mohawk River.
If you go down to Lock 7 here, which is just a few miles below Rexford where we are, you'll see a big old blue and gray tugboat parked there. That tugboat is named Margot, and it was built at Jacobson Shipyard down in Oyster Bay on Long Island, which is where I grew up.
When George moved to Schenectady to attend Union College, he craved the closeness to water he had on Long Island. He found the Erie Canal, located less than a half-mile from campus, and became immersed in its history. George fell down a rabbit hole deeper than the 14-foot depth of the waterway. He earned a master's degree in folklore, launching a career in songwriting.
What I found was that first that I was not the only person who was interested in songs of the canal and what they represented about history, but also that the canal system is still a very vital culture. And I became an absolutely shameless advocate for it, as I still am.
George is much more than an advocate. He's a renowned musician in the Erie Canal community. He's been playing folk music since the 1950s and has helped build one of the nichest subgenres out there, Erie Canal Folk.
Tow line broke in the middle of the night. Steersman John drunk, he jumped up all in a fright. I heaved on the tiller stick with all my might, steered her to the bank and Daddy made it all right.
This is Canal Keepers, a podcast where we tell the stories of the people who keep the Erie Canal relevant today. I'm your host, Gloria Rivera. When you think about music and the Erie Canal, you probably think of the song Low Bridge, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. Even 200 years after the Erie Canal first opened, people know the lyrics to that song. On this episode, we talk to George Ward, who has spent his life spreading the history of the Erie Canal through 2 albums and countless live shows. George has performed for huge crowds and sold hundreds of albums. He plays both the 6 and 12 string guitars, the accordion, and even the juice harp. The juice harp is a small instrument George plays by pressing it to his mouth and plucking a reed fixed on one end. The instrument has a distinct sound that was featured on one of the first songs he ever wrote.
So you'd have this obnoxious thing with a kid attached to it. And I thought, what would a kid like that be thinking? My little brother's tied to a ring on the deck. He ain't a-going overboard again, by heck. I never had a notion that my mama could swim till she dived off the rudder going after him.
George discovered the juice harp through research and found it was a common instrument of past canal riders.
That was just a function of being, I suppose, steeped in it for a while. I've been seeing those pictures, telling those stories, hearing those stories from people. And it just pretty much popped out from that. You can't hurry stuff like that. I mean, it comes when you learn enough to tell the story.
One of those stories was about General Philip Schuyler, a major advocate of the Champlain Canal. The Champlain Canal was built to connect Lake Champlain to the Hudson River. While at the Schenectady Historical Society in 1992, planning a celebration of General Schuyler, George took on the daunting task of creating something the industry calls an instant album.
And in a moment of complete madness, I said, I think I can probably put together an album of songs in a week on cassette, because this was a cassette era, that addressed this period. When I landed in sweet Philadelphia, sure the weather was pleasant and clear, but I did not stay long in that city. Oh, so straightway I shall let you hear.
Those instant albums are not normal for George. It can be a grueling process to write just one song.
Sometimes they just happen. And sometimes you work on them forever and they never happen. It's like writing just about anything else.
One of George's favorite songs was inspired by the late Richard Garrity, an avid canaler and historian. Garrity was the author of a book called Canal Boatman. The book covered the transitional period on the canal. Canal travelers went from horse-drawn canal boats to steamboats. After World War II, commercial trade dropped off and left Garrity's readers wondering what would come next. The song about Garrity was so loved, it was later performed at his funeral.
So I'll do the first and the last verse, I hope. See how my memory works. There were pirates in the fields along the old canal. There were dragons on the railway, had you known. But a boy won't read the future with adventure all around, and with a drop of Erie water in his blood.
Atop George's favorite moments as a performer is when he got to do a live show on the Lois McClure, a real canal boat built in 1862. But there was a rainstorm during his outdoor performance on Lake Champlain.
So it did rain, and we did. A lot of people left, but a lot of people stayed and wanted to hear some more songs. So we moved into the Lois McClure, and I got to actually do a canal concert in the hold of a canal boat.
The challenge of this impromptu show was the way the boat was built. The 1800s ship had a giant centerboard truck running through its center, blocking George from part of his audience.
So I saw about half the people because the other half were on the other side of the centerboard trunk.
Over the years, George has spread his joy of the canal to children in the community. One of his favorite activities is bringing mini boat-building kits to local schools. These kits represent the ships often seen on the Erie Canal, like the bateau, a long, thin, flat-bottomed ship that rose in popularity in North America during the colonial period. They were especially popular during the peak of the Erie Canal.
There's one teacher who over in Washington County who did a wonderful thing, because we did one day of this, and then I was gone for a couple of weeks and then came back. When I came back, she had gotten a giant map about the size of that wall of New York State, and she had each kid put their boat on some place on the Hudson River or on the canal, and so they could say, all right, my boat's at Alliance, or my boat's at Waterford, or my boat's at Rexford, or wherever it was.
As our bateau sets sail for the next port, George is hopeful the legacy of music on the canal will continue.
I mean, at this point, there is so much creativity, so much technology, so many people, most of whom are not going to think once, let alone twice, about the Erie Canal ever, but somebody will. Somebody always has. Somebody else will come along doing these songs, or doing other songs, or making up other new songs.
There are other musicians who perform in this niche genre. The question is, who comes after them? While that is unknown, George hopes the next generation will have that same attachment to the canal he does.
And again, what matters, that concert in the Lois McClure mattered. Building those boat models with kids mattered. The fact that somebody else learned that song and sang it at Dick Garrity's funeral matters. So, am I a bard of the Erie Canal? Go figure. I'll accept your assessment. But that's the story.
Canal Keepers is a production of students at the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University. This episode was reported and written by Wally McKeon and edited by Lauren Davis. Produced by Dan Klosowski, who also composed our intro music. Check out our website, canalkeeperspod.com, where you can read a feature story on 3 other musicians who make similar music to George and hear a sample of their work. And follow us on Instagram, @canalkeepers. I'm your host, Gloria Rivera. Thanks for listening.